Do you own or are you planning to buy a Ford F-250? If so, let me show you what you should and what you shouldn't buy. What's going on YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Mason and I am a technician here at the Ford dealership. In this video, I'm going to give you everything I've learned working on Super Duties over the last 10 years, specifically the do's and the don'ts when it comes to buying one. We're not talking about the 1978 Ford F-250. We are only talking about the last 10 years, mainly 2011 up, because 2011 for Ford was a huge engine and platform change. So we're going to break these Super Duties down engine by engine at first, and then at the end of this video we're going to come back to transmissions because a lot of the engines have the same transmissions. So I don't want to mention the same thing twice. First up is the 6.2 liter Boss V8 engine. Boss being the code name that Ford gave this engine whenever it come out. Fun fact, it was actually named Hurricane prior to being named Boss, but they changed it after Hurricane Katrina. This is a single overhead cam engine and it debuted in the 2010 Raptor, but you can find it in the 2011 to 2022 F-250s and F-Series pickup trucks. The 2011 to 2016 version of this engine made 385 horsepower and 405 feet-pound of torque. The 2017 to 2022 version made the same exact horsepower, but they were able to add an extra 25 feet-pound of torque to bring that up to 430. So honestly, overall, the 6.2 engine, in my opinion, is garbage. I hate them. They don't make very much power for what it is. Really, if you're going to pick an engine, you're better off in most cases just picking the 6.7. The most common issue I usually see on the 6.2 liter engine is misfires. This is what I call the $3,500 misfire job. You got 8 coils, you got 16 spark plugs, you got 8 plug wires, and it probably is still going to need a PCM after all of that to fix the misfire. They come in all the time with PO300s, PO316s, random misfire codes, and they are really difficult sometimes to fix. I also see intake manifold runner issues quite commonly on the 6.2 and occasionally the broken valve spring.
They don't have catastrophic engine failure though. They'll run like shit forever. If your budget limits you to a 6.2, just go to a Chevrolet.
Literally, I mean, if your budget limits you to a 6.2, I would encourage you to either buy a Chevrolet or buy an F-150, because you're pretty much going to get more horsepower and more torque out of the F-150 than what you was with a 6.2. I personally hate these engines. If you didn't know, the 6.2 has 16 spark plugs, one that comes in up here by the intake and another that comes in down here by the exhaust manifold. So it is not a hemispherical engine like we're used to seeing in most of the other engines Ford has made. They don't leak oil. They don't. That's the one thing the 6.2 has going for it. It doesn't leak oil. And the number 2 thing it has going for it is it does not make enough power to hurt itself. It's really slow.
That's really not true.
God, man, they're so underpowered in the 250s, it seems like.
It's all right. You ever drove a 150, like a regular 150 with a 6.2?
Yeah, it ain't that bad. Like the Raptor 6.2 seems to have a lot more power than the 6.2 and the F-250, I will say. But this is a F-250 buyer's guide videos. Overall, the 6.2 Boss V8 engine gets 2 out of 10 stars because it's just not that great. It's probably the worst of the engines we will talk about today. Moving on from the 6.2 to the new 7.3 liter Godzilla engine. This is a overhead valve engine. Yeah, you heard that right. This is a Ford overhead valve, not overhead cam. The engine come out in the year 2020 and is still being put in the F-Series pickup trucks as the gasoline engine. This is the largest displacement engine Ford currently produces, 7.3 liters. It's a big boy. So the 2020 to 2022 model made 430 horsepower and 475 feet-pound of torque. In 2023, we were able to add an extra 10 feet-pound of torque to get it up to 485. I can't mention the 7.3 without talking about its counterpart, the 6.8. This engine come out in the year 2023 and has since completely replaced the 6.2. You can only get the 6.8 in the XL models. Really and truthfully, it's pretty much the same identical engine to the 7.3. It just has a little bit shorter stroke. It's kind of similar to the relationship the 4.8 and 5.3 LS engines had back in the Silverado trucks in the mid-2000s. Pretty similar. You're really not going to be able to tell the difference, so I'm kind of going to count these two engines as the same thing. They're both overhead valve. They look exactly identical. The 6.8 engine is a little bit less powerful. It come in at 405 horsepower and 445 feet-pound of torque. The 7.3 Don't really have a super big opinion on it yet. It is still pretty new, and if you watch my channel, you know I'm a super big fan of the 6.7. I do a lot of 6.7 work, so most of what I work on is not the 7.3. Most of our customers, they just want the diesel. But as these 7.3s are starting to become more and more common, I'm sure I'm going to become more knowledgeable on them. I know that they have had some issues with the early 7.3s about dropping lifters and having lifter failure on them. Honestly, other than lifters, seeing a couple lifter issues and the couple little oil leaks I've seen, really haven't seen a lot of issues with this engine. So overall, on my scale, this thing is going to get a 7 out of 10 stars because I really just haven't seen anything negative out of them yet. Now moving on to my personal favorite engine ever from Ford, the 6.7 liter PowerStroke. This was Ford's first ever diesel produced in-house, not by a third-party company. It come out in the year 2011 and is still being built. I hope it's built for the rest of my days. The 6.7 liter PowerStroke has reverse flow heads. That means the exhaust is on the inside of the engine, where usually you would see an intake manifold and the exhaust is on the outside of the cylinder head. What? I say it backwards? What'd I say?
You said exhaust both times. You said exhaust where the intake is and the exhaust on the outside.
Oh man, all right. That means that the intake is on the outside of the cylinder head and the exhaust is on the inside. This works really well because our turbocharger sits down here in the middle, so we're able to contain all that heat to the center of the engine. Industry first double-sided compressor wheel mounted on a single shaft. What does that mean?
I have no idea. I've seen it somewhere.
Compressor?
Huh?
What compressor? AC compressor?
Turbo. Compressor wheel on the turbo on one shaft.
Jake just looked it up. Basically, it means there's a compressor wheel on this side and a compressor wheel on this side, and it's still mounted on one shaft in your turbo. It's kind of cool. Did not know that. So the 6.7 come out in the year 2011, and in that year it made 390 horsepower and 735 feet-pound of torque. Fun fact, Duramax actually came out right after the PowerStroke, and they had a little bit more horsepower than the PowerStroke did when they first come out. So Ford provided all of the 2011 customers that had already bought a truck a free software update that increased the power up to 400 horsepower. That way they could beat Duramax and have the most powerful diesel truck on the road. 15 to 16 year, we were able to up the horsepower to 440 with 860 feet-pound of torque. Had a body style change in 2017, and believe it or not, we added some more power to this engine. We upped the horsepower to 450 horsepower and 935 feet-pound of torque. In the year 2020, we made a huge leap and jumped into the quadruple digits on torque. We made 1,050 feet-pound of torque and 475 horsepower. The year 2023, we added the high output option to it, upping our torque to 1,200 feet-pounds of torque and 500 horsepower. That is absolutely insanity coming out of a diesel engine. If you watch my YouTube channel, you probably could get the idea real fast that the 6.7 liter PowerStroke is a piece of trash, because I make videos all day long on the problems with them and how I fix those problems. But you have to remember that I am a Ford technician. This is what I do. This is what I specialize in. So of course, I'm going to have a lot of videos on how to fix Ford 6.7 PowerStrokes. But overall, this engine is pretty reliable. I would say it's more reliable than any other diesel engine ever put in a Ford. That is the 7.3 included for all you 7.3 lovers. They're just not where the 6.7 is, especially when you factor in how much more power the 6.7 is having to withstand all the time. If I were going to break up some of the most common issues with the 6.7 though, oil leaks would probably be at the top. Upper oil pan leaks, occasional front covers, vacuum pump bolts backing out on the early ones, injector grommets leaking. I've seen turbos leak. There's a lot of different places that can leak oil, and with any diesel engine, you're going to expect to have oil leaks. In the year 2020, they redesigned the oil pan. They put a metal press gasket back on it instead of silicone, and from what I've seen, this has fixed most of the oil leaks with the newer ones. I haven't seen a lot of oil pan leaks on the 20 and up trucks yet. Now that's yet. It's still early, so we'll see. If you know anything about the 6.7 PowerStroke, you know that they come with a CP4 Bosch fuel pump. Those pumps are absolute garbage. It's not really entirely Ford's fault, but they did install the system on their trucks. Do a lot of fuel system issues. Most of the time, though, it's your fault. Most of the time, it's because you poured something in it you shouldn't have. you got water in it, you got DEF in it, you didn't change your fuel filters at all, you went 70,000 miles on a set of fuel filters, you really can't be mad because your fuel pump tore up. Number one thing, oil leaks. Number two thing, fuel system. After that, I occasionally see turbo issues on these trucks with the vanes sticking. Not really a whole lot tears up on this 6.7 PowerStroke. Overall, the 6.7 liter PowerStroke gets a 9 out of 10 stars because, like I said earlier, it's my favorite engine. I had to give it a good rating. Problem-wise, they're really probably still better than anything else you can buy. I would still rather have a 6.7 PowerStroke than a Duramax or Cummins at this point in time. I feel like they're more dependable, and the horsepower you get with these is really unmatched anywhere else, as long as you maintain the truck. Now, a lot of the repairs that I do are caused by lack of maintenance, usually. So make sure you're maintaining your 6.7 PowerStroke if you own one. So moving on from the engines to the transmissions, there's really only two transmissions we're going to talk about. That is the 6R140 and the 10R140. Now, we have a 6R100 and we have a 10R100, but they're really the same thing. They just have a little bit smaller parts inside of them. They're not quite as beefy, but if you set them right side by side, you'd have a hard time telling the difference between the two. Starting out with the 6R140, this came out in the year 2011 and was in the F-250 all the way up until the year 2020 when it was replaced with the 10R140. Now, if you didn't know, 6R140 stands for 6-speed R rear-wheel drive, and 140 stands for 1,400 foot-pound of torque is what it's rated for. Same thing with 10R140, except we changed from a 6-speed to a 10-speed. The 6R140 honestly is pretty bulletproof. I would go to say that the 6R140 and 10R140 are just as dependable, if not more dependable, than any Allison transmission or any other brand you will get. The 6R140 is extremely dependable unless you install one of those Chinese tunes y'all like to put in them so much that turns the power insanely high. That is usually the only time I see failure in the 6R140. Matter of fact, I've never seen a 6R140 transmission tear up that did not have a tune on it. Never seen a stock one break. That should tell you something there. Usually when I do see the 6R140 tear up though, I'm usually seeing some clutch failure, maybe center support issues, really not a super lot of hard parts inside this thing that break. I have seen a few broken input shafts on the early 6R140s, but there's really not much that I feel like I need to tell you about this transmission. I would feel very good about buying pretty much any 6R140 as long as it doesn't have some kind of crazy tune in it. The 6R140 gets 8 out of 10 stars because it is a really good option as far as transmissions go. Moving on from the 6-speed to the 10-speed, if you watch my channel, you know I am a huge 10-speed guy. I love them. I love the 10R80s, the 10R60s, the 10R140s for what they do for you power-wise, what they do for you fuel economy-wise, and as dependable as they have been doing all of that with all those moving parts is really impressive. The 10R140 came out in the year 2020, and you can find it behind the 7.3 and the 6.7. The 10R100, I believe, was just developed recently. You'll only find that 10R100 behind the 6.8, so we're really not even talking about it much because I said 6.8, I've only seen one or two of them up to this point. They're not super common, only on XL trucks. I haven't seen a whole lot of issues out of the 10R140. I have seen some CDF drum bushings move just like the 10R80 does. If you don't know what I'm talking about, please go search my channel, CDF drum. You will find 100 videos of me talking about this issue on the 10R80. So I have seen that just a few times on the 10R140. The only other thing I could tell you about the 10R140 is that in the early ones, I think it was only the F-350s, they had a planetary recall where we replaced the rear planet in the back of the case. That was because the bearing could fail on one of the planets and it would cause metal to just go everywhere in your unit. Really not a good thing. The one thing I love about the 10R140 though is that it keeps it in that peak RPM range that you want to be in all the time. Overall, the 10R140 gets 9 out of 10 stars because it's probably my favorite transmission out. I love the 10 speeds. It gives you every single bit of that reliability that the 6R140 had while still keeping your engine in the best RPM range it possibly can with those 10 gears. So which F-250 is right for you? Well, that honestly all depends on your needs. I know if it was me personally, I would buy a 6.7 just because I feel like that is the best engine option they have. If money is not an option, I'm going to buy a newer 6.7 with the 10R140. I understand that people are on budgets. So if you're on a budget and you don't pull 20, 30,000 pounds all the time, maybe the 7.3 might be the right choice for you. I can't exactly make that choice for you, but I can say me personally, I like the 6.7 PowerStroke, but I'm a diesel dummy. I like diesels. That's kind of my thing. So each individual is going to have their own preferences for what they like, but I hope this video at least helped you understand some of the common issues. And if it didn't even help you understand that, maybe you got a better idea of what engine options and what transmission options are even available in the F-250. If you didn't take anything else away from my video, do not buy a 6.2. They suck. If you do buy a 6.2, don't come see me because I don't want to work on it. If you haven't already liked the video, be sure to go down there and hit that like button for me. It really helps support the channel. If you're looking for Flying Wrenches merch, go down below in the description. I have my Teespring linked up down there if you want to go check out all the merch I currently have. All right, guys, that's going to wrap us up for this one. As always, I appreciate you guys watching, and I will catch y'all in the next one. Peace.